Today we're catching some sun and waves with Nancy, a QHS member whose life is as vibrant and refreshing as a seaside breeze. What currents brought her to the sunny shores of the quantum shift? Let's surf behind the scenes to see the waves she's been riding.
Hi, I'm Nancy G, and I am doing my prequel, Better Late Than Never. I have a full life of twists and turns and much drama, so I will try to summarize and make it as brief as possible. I was born in Pasadena, California on November 2nd, 1947, which was actually the same day that Howard Hughes flew his practice flight of the Spruce Goose in Long Beach Harbor. I just thought that was interesting. So I have a very mixed heritage from DNA results that I did with Ancestry.com. Irish, 28%, English, 20%, Scottish, 19%. A little bit of Jewish in there, 17%, but I didn't know. I have Sweden, Denmark, Norway, smaller percentages. My lineage goes back to the New England settlers. My great-grandfather, my eighth great-grandfather was William Bradford on the Mayflower. So in the last few years that I've done research, I've found out information on that, which is really interesting. And I am in the Mayflower Society. When I was born, we lived with my maternal grandmother in Altadena, California, until my parents purchased a home in Pasadena. My father was a World War II Army veteran who grew up in Warren, Pennsylvania. Both he and my uncle graduated from the University of Pennsylvania Wharton School of Business, and he graduated with a business degree. He served as a sergeant in the Army in the Pacific during the war. He met my mother after the war. He was considered older at 38 years old when I was born. My mother, who attended USC, seemed to have left school to get married close to her graduation, so never got a degree. My mother had 2 children from a previous marriage prior to meeting my father, so I have a half-brother and sister who I actually am not really in contact with. Only my brother lived with us briefly for a couple years. My parents were divorced when I was in first grade, and my father was given full custody of me by the courts. My paternal grandmother, who was of Irish descent, her parents were from Ireland, lived with us until I was 10 years old. We moved from our house in Pasadena to Redlands, California, after my father was promoted in his business to a local office of his company. I attended a local Catholic school through 6th grade and lived at home until my grandmother, who was at that time in her 70s, moved out to live with my uncle. In the 7th grade, I attended Marymount in Palos Verdes for a year. It was a boarding school for grade school and high school girls and a local grade school for boys. My father would drive me back and forth approximately 80 miles to spend the weekends at home in Redlands. This only lasted for 1 year because my father was promoted again to Davenport, Iowa. So we moved back to Iowa. We lived in Bettendorf, Iowa. Not that it matters, but I would spend those 2 summers, though, at my uncle's home in Arcadia, California. The second summer, I was told right before flying back to Iowa that my father had been ill and had his gallbladder removed. I was going to be able to stay home and attend a local school, so I was really disappointed, other than obviously being disappointed that my father was really sick. So I went home to take care of him. He had smoked his whole life, adult years, and he was diagnosed actually with stage 4 lung cancer. He always smoked in our home, so I was around secondhand smoke a lot. I was sent back to Redlands, to California, to live with some really close friends. And he was trying to return to California on a train, and he passed away in New Mexico. He wanted to go to the City of Hope. My mother then came into the picture because she had been, I had not seen her due to the court decision. So I had to move from Redlands to live with her and her husband, who divorced her husband was the reason she divorced my father to marry So I'm not going to really go into any further details of that scenario, but it was pretty up and down during my 2 years in high school. When I was done with high school, she moved me back to her mother's, my maternal grandmother. I attended Utah State for 2 years before deciding I wanted to be in California. I got a job at a local company and interviewed to be an airline stewardess, as they were called at that time. I was selected by United Airlines, but the day I was leaving, I changed my mind. Young and in love, dumb. I thought I was in love and didn't want to leave. Afterwards, I went to work for a major corporation in Pasadena, California, where I met my husband. I was living with my maternal grandmother at that time. I was promoted several times during my 38-year tenure with the company to different positions and divisions. I early retired at 53 years old due to a layoff. My retirement only lasted 2 years because my husband and my neighbor, who was a manager for the Department of Veteran Affairs, conspired to get me to go to work for him temporarily. He needed a secretary and had been nudging my husband and him, and they decided I should go back to work. Anyway, it was very difficult to get hired full-time with the government, as most people know, unless you had certain qualifications. I was finally hired permanently after reapplying, and it was about 2 years to be a permanent employee. I worked for 11 and a half years before retiring again. I was married in 1971. My husband was an Army Vietnam veteran, disabled, who passed away with lung cancer in 2020. And again, he had smoked his whole life. We had 2 sons, and I am blessed with 4 grandchildren, ranging in age from 9 to 22 years old. My oldest grandson just graduated from college in California. So I had a very turbulent marriage with many ups and downs, both mentally and financially. My husband worked in the electronics industry and decided to open a printed circuit board business locally. It was doing well, including making circuit boards for Apple Computer for the first mouse boards, until they decided to go to China. Afterwards, we closed the business, and through many turbulent and challenging times of our marriage, I hung in because I did not want to get divorced because of what I saw my father go through with the divorce with my mother. I'm very sensitive to the feelings of others, which I think can be a negative for my well-being. Now I'll go forward with my medical history. When I was 4 or 5 years old, I had my tonsils removed due to numerous ear infections with high temperatures. Now I know the fevers were probably good to fight the infection. I went to a horse ranch summer camp. I mention this because we had our own horse for 2 weeks, and when we would be out and we'd run the horses, I used to get a side ache in my left side, and I literally would stop the horse and just jump off because it hurt. So now, fast forward to today, present time, 67 years later, I was told by a doctor after my first of 5 colonoscopies that I had a very windy colon. She also removed a couple of non-cancerous polyps. Ever since the other 4, I have had no polyps and been told I don't really need to do another colonoscopy. I currently am having issues after more recent bowel surgery that seem to block up and give me a side ache in the same place. So that's why I mention this. It's interesting to me because I remember that. Okay, another issue, I was in the back seat of the car when I was in my early 30s. We were rear-ended at a stoplight. It wasn't real serious, but it jerked my neck, so I developed a whiplash. My 2 friends in the front filed insurance claims, but I thought I was okay, so I did not. A couple days later, I felt issues with my neck, so I started on my journey for chiropractic care due to the whiplash, and I've continued ever since. Number 4, and not a good one, I was a smoker for 45 years. I had tried to quit many times by different methods before finally quitting in 2011 after foot surgery recovery. I told my doctor I would not smoke from that day forward, and I did not. So it's been 14 years now. So yeah, it was challenging. I did many things to try to quit, but nothing worked until a little Vicodin while I was recovering from foot surgery. Anyway, in 2003, related to that, and with my husband smoking, I signed up for a 10-year national lung screening trial study at UCLA to see if a CT scan diagnosed lung cancer sooner than an X-ray. Although my CT scan did not show lung cancer, it did say I had moderate to severe emphysema. I found that hard to believe, and so did my husband. And I still, although I did have some symptoms, it probably was right on. I went to a pulmonologist for a couple years, and he would prescribe inhalers, and when I was sick, he gave me drugs. One time I'm like, why did you give me so many drugs? And he said, well, you said you were sick. After that, I started really thinking about what I was doing, and I stopped the inhalers, which I think helped me breathe better, to be honest. So anyway, I've never had a general physician or other doctor, cardiologist, pick up on any lung issue because it was a private study. So that was good. I continued answering yearly health surveys for 10 years for this research, and never had any hospital stays or bad illnesses during that time. Through the years after quitting smoking, I've gotten better, and I definitely had less symptoms since joining QHS in April 2023 and wearing my QT devices and now my HHS and doing the touch. I had other female issues with breast and uterine fibroids starting in my early 40s. I had uterine ablation surgery in my mid-40s before menopause. I had fibroids, and breast and uterine fibroids, and they really only improved after I had gone through menopause and stopped wearing estrogen patches because the estrogen was feeding the fibroids, obviously. My gynecologist would track it and do ultrasounds because he had a machine in his office, and it got better. And so that was great. I did have a hysterectomy 2 years ago, actually to the date almost, because my uterus was prolapsed and literally falling out. So at that time, my surgeon removed my uterus and also did a bowel lift, which he said I needed. I was diagnosed around 2014 with a partially blocked carotid artery, less than 70%. At the time of my diagnosis from an ultrasound, my cardiologist put me on a regimen of pharmaceuticals and diet recommendations. I had already been taking statins prescribed by my DO, for approximately 10 years. He was an older conservative doctor who I think the world of. He consulted me personally through several years before the blockage increased to 70%. I underwent vascular surgery by a wonderful surgeon at Hoag Hospital in Newport Beach in October 2020. My surgery was at the end of the pandemic lockdown, so no family members could be with me while I was in the hospital. This hospital staff were wonderful, and I was able to go home the next day, although it was a challenging procedure. So, my recovery went really well. I've been getting an ultrasound every year so my surgeon can monitor it. So far, he said they are wide open, although I know there's some blockage on my right carotid. Other issues I've had are my blood pressure. I definitely have white coat syndrome. At any time I go to the doctor, and also whenever I look at my blood pressure monitor. I think it's definitely improved since I've had my V9 QT device, HHS, and I'm doing the touch as much as possible. I have listened and learned so much from our QHS training and information calls. The WOW cooking calls, nutrition, breathing techniques have been amazing. I think that's what's really helped my lungs. Key training, HHS meditation, and the touch have all been a godsend. I've learned so much and changed my habits for the better. I'm still working on improving. I recently did my final bioscan with Darlene, and I still have a lot of inflammation in the yellow and a couple in the red, although I've had some improvement since my last reports. So this was the second study I've been in. I now realize that the supplements I've been taking needed help, so I've recently started taking Darlene's supplemental recommendations to detox more. I take her recommendations seriously and will work on improving. I definitely still have challenges with getting back to exercising regularly. Thank you, Tracy. I was doing it religiously before the pandemic. I'm usually very active and mobile and on the go during the day, and I still am, except for the time sitting at the computer or on digital iPhones, etc. I listen to all your videos, Tracy, your YouTube videos. I do yoga stretches briefly, 10-15 minutes every morning. I used to do yoga, more full yoga, hour, 45 minutes to an hour, but I started having some shoulder issues and then some hip issues. So I'm currently having issues with what my chiropractor has diagnosed as sciatica. But I got a massage last night, and my masseuse said now it's currently my hamstrings. So he thinks, he said they're on fire. He says it's probably from my desk chair and being on my computer so much. I just got a new computer, and this last week or so has been very challenging, learning the new and trying to get my old files back. I'm really grateful and blessed to be in QHS, and I want to thank everyone involved in this project. I'm looking really forward to going to the QArc. Although I thought in the past that I was doing well for my age, and I did when I joined QHS, compared to many who live in my retirement community or elsewhere, I know that QHS is my godsend, and I feel very blessed to be able to live healthier and longer and to enjoy many things I currently cannot do. I look forward to offering more of my help with our project to heal humanity. I can't wait to show all the naysayers around me what the new me looks like. I'm sending my love to everybody. I love you guys.
Join us on the Prequel, where every story matters and every voice is heard. Because here at QHS, we're all about healing, learning, and growing together.